Good evening or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. I'm Kevin Grace, and this is episode 3 of the KMG Show. And first topic is Canada held hostage, day 14. Well, what's the latest? The latest is that the RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, say that they will leave their outpost on Wet'suwet'en territory if the road is kept clear. That's from Canada's Public Safety Minister, Bill Blair. Apparently, a elder of Wet'suwet'en has already said that no, that's not good enough. But what we have here is a precedent that's been set. It's not the first time this precedent's been set in Canada. For many years, there were illegal blockades of logging in British Columbia, which many well-known people were involved. And they got court orders and then an order to enforce the court order, and blockades remained, and eventually the forest companies threw in the towel. Breaking the law works in Canada if you are on the right side of a political issue. Someone who is not on the right side of this issue is Peter MacKay. He is a Nova Scotian, longtime former cabinet minister. He is now the leading candidate for the leadership of the Conservative Party. And here's an amusing story from the CBC. Conservative leadership hopeful Peter MacKay is facing blowback after posting, then deleting, a tweet that expressed support for counter-protesters who dismantled a barricade erected by supporters of the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs near Edmonton on Wednesday. Glad to see a couple Albertans with a pickup truck can do more for our economy in an afternoon than Justin Trudeau could do in 4 years. The tweet was a reference to Wednesday's confrontation between a group of counter-protesters and some anti-pipeline demonstrators who had set up a blockade on CN's main rail line in the western part of the provincial capital. After a provincial court granted an injunction against the protesters, the counter-protesters removed material that was blocking the railway and dismantled a wooden makeshift barrier the anti-pipeline activists had built. Critics quickly denounced the tweet as inappropriate because they said it appeared the former justice minister was promoting vigilantism. Well, you see, when people break the law by erecting illegal blockades, that's not vigilantism. That's an expression of righteous indignation. It's about passion for justice. Sean Carlton, a historian at Mount Royal University in Calgary, said it's dangerous for politicians in position of influence to support people taking the law into their own hands. Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the New Democratic Party, has openly praised the illegal blockades, those who are responsible for it. But once again, don't confuse that with supporting vigilantism. Professor Carlton said, I think it kind of legitimizes this more vigilante approach. I would hate for those kinds of comments to embolden the wrong kind of people trying to take this in their own hands and risk making things worse. The wrong kind of people. Well, who are the wrong kind of people? Well, Canadians are the wrong kind of people. And if the government does not enforce the law, I suppose the message is that no, don't take the law into your own hands. You're just gonna have to live with the anarchy. MacKay's tweet on the rail blockade was eventually deleted and replaced with a new 3-part message. I see this as an act of good citizenship, the peaceful removal of debris deliberately placed on a railway that posed a threat to public safety. I stand with the workers, producers, and suppliers who work hard, obey the law, care for their neighbors, and keep Canada the best place in the world to live. MacKay went on to say that when he is Prime Minister, progress will not be accomplished with professional protesters shutting down the Canadian economy and harming innocent people who are trying to make ends meet. This social media Dust Up isn't the first time McKay's leadership campaign has run into trouble on social media. Earlier this month, he had made fun of Justin Trudeau for expensing $877 in yoga sessions and spa bills while running for the leadership of the Liberal Party. Meanwhile, Aaron O'Toole, who is an Ontario MP, told the National Post he would criminalize the act of blocking critical infrastructure, including railways, and give police the power to clear protesters without an injunction. Marilyn Gladue, another MP, another candidate for the Conservative leadership, told a local newspaper that the federal government should call in the military to enforce court injunctions if the RCMP can't handle it. Those comments provoked a similar backlash. Now, news stories increasingly go to Twitter. I mean, okay, so what are people thinking? Well, let's go to Twitter. And anybody doing anything is going to result in people saying that it's wrong. Doesn't matter how anodyne the behavior is, you can always find people on Twitter huffing and puffing and expressing their outrage that they are literally trembling right now. Oh, back to Professor Carlton. These macho calls for aggression and a kind of might is right approach, we've seen that even just in the last 30 years in Indigenous settler relations, they can go very sideways. I suppose Professor Carlton, well, I don't know whether Professor Carlton understands that direct action of the kind wielded by the Wet'suwet'en protesters is might is right. It is a might is right approach. We are doing this and we dare you to do anything about it. When asked about the Edmonton incident during a press conference on Parliament Hill today, Public Safety Minister Bill Blair said the situation should be resolved by peaceful means. I always advocate for adherence to the rule of law and peaceful resolution of these disputes and will continue to support that. Bill Blair had a big role in responsibility for policing the G20 summit in Toronto a few years ago, which turned into a fiasco. The policing costs were over $1 billion. Nothing is decided at G20 conferences. It's just a glorified photo op. All the decisions, such as they are made in advance because it's not possible to start from zero and come to a conclusion about anything with so many different participants from so many different countries in the short period of time that these summits take place in. What we saw in Toronto under Chief Bill Blair was that anarchists were given free rein. Meanwhile, ordinary Torontonians trying to go about their business were stopped and harassed and told, who are you, what are you doing here, where are you going, and why? Just another example of Canada's anarcho-tyranny. We have a report from an expert on the Canadian military that send in the army, that would be a ludicrous response to rail blockades. Yes. It's a topsy-turvy world we live in here, where enforcing the law is ludicrous. It would just be absolutely ludicrous. This is another story from the CBC. Over 7 years ago, 2 books written by retired Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Bland offered some sobering warnings about the future of the Crown Indigenous relationship, warnings that seem eerily prescient after the events of the past 2 weeks. One book was called Uprising. It was a novel. Another one was called Time Bomb, Canada and the First Nations. Canada's transportation network, CBC notes, was at the time and remains today an easy target for aspiring insurgents and activists. Although Bland has deep respect for Indigenous culture and aspirations, in his book, the former chair of Defense Management Studies at Queen's University examines the looming crisis through the lens of the military and national security. So he is responding to a number of public figures in Canada who are saying enough is enough, that this needs to end. Clearly, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau doesn't want it to end because, as I mentioned yesterday, my prediction is that he'll wait, I don't know, a week or two or whatever, and then come and say, look, my hands are tied. I'm forced to make a settlement. Here's the settlement, and you're all going to have to agree with this, because if you don't, you're an evil racist, and you don't want a civil war or anything like that, do you? So let's get back to the retired military man. Calls to send in the army, particularly at this stage, are ludicrous, said Colonel Bland, who added he believes that kind of solution is way beyond anything we need to do now or in the future. The military is and should be the federal response of last resort. The Army's mission is to fight foreign enemies and terrorists, not Canada's own citizens. Treating the blockades like a full-blown insurrection would not only be perilous, it would ignore the real nature of the Crown-Indigenous relationship. There is nothing so dangerous that you have to send the Army in, he said. Nothing so dangerous. This story reminded me that I have never in my lifetime heard a serious debate about the purpose of the Canadian Forces. That's their official name. They're not the Canadian Armed Forces, just the Canadian Forces, because I suppose the word armed would trigger some people. Our military doesn't really have a purpose. To defend Canada from foreign enemies? Well, who? The United States? The United States is the only conceivable foreign enemy that Canada could have. When Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, he attempted to get people excited about the prospect that Russia, bad Vlad Putin, intended to seize control of the Canadian Arctic. Canada, or Russia rather, already has more than enough frozen wasteland. It's not interested in ours. Fighting terrorists, how exactly is the Canadian Army supposed to fight terrorists? Terrorists where? Terrorists here, terrorists abroad. We have a peacekeeping mission, Canada does, in the African country of Mali. Why are we there? Who knows? Perhaps to protect mining interests. But the Canadian Army has become a social laboratory. It has no real purpose. Its equipment is all falling apart, out of date, largely useless. Canada has 4 submarines, which are not seaworthy. They were bought secondhand, and they're useless. Canadian soldiers have to hitch rides from the Americans when they go anywhere in the world because we do not have the transport to put them anywhere. For decades now, every Canadian government has announced that, oh, we're finally doing something about the declining material of the Canadian Army, and X billions of dollars is promised. And guess what? It never gets spent. As to how much money the Canadian government actually spends, that's something of a mystery too, because the committee system in the House of Commons, which used to examine this rigorously, was emasculated by Stephen Harper, and that valuable work is now become just a rubber stamp. As far as I can see, the Canadian military's sole purpose is to serve as a pipeline for sexual harassment and PTSD claims. But the CBC managed to find an expert who says that no, we couldn't possibly call in the Army. There was an incident in Quebec, Oka, in 1990, which started when police moved against a Mohawk barricade and a police officer was killed while trying to enforce an injunction. That triggered the barricading of railway lines, highways, and a major bridge. And it lasted for 78 days. Eventually, the protesters there was a convoy formed, and they were pulled out. The troops were sent in, originally, I suppose, to protect the Quebecois from the protesters, but by the end of 78 days, the situation had turned. The convoy was met with a volley of rocks and other objects as they were leaving, and it was clear by the end that the army was, in fact, there to protect the protesters from Quebecois people. Now, of course, army was patrolling Canada's streets during the October crisis of 1970, which strangely the CBC doesn't mention that in its story. That great Canadian hero Pierre Trudeau suspended civil liberties, declared martial law, no more habeas corpus, threw a bunch of journalists and intellectuals in prison for up to 6 months. But I don't know, perhaps that's kind of too embarrassing to talk about now. So there was a Democrat debate in Las Vegas last night, and use a bunch of boxing metaphors. The gloves were off, etc., etc. AP reports from the opening bell, Democrats savaged New York billionaire Mike Bloomberg and raised pointed questions about Bernie Sanders' take no prisoners politics during a contentious debate Wednesday night that threatened to further muddy the party's urgent quest to defeat President Donald Trump. Bloomberg, the former New York mayor who was once a Republican, was forced to defend his record and pass comments related to race, gender, and his personal wealth in an occasionally rocky debate stage debut. Sanders, meanwhile, tried to beat back pointed questions about his embrace of democratic socialism and his health following a heart attack last year. And also, we're not hearing so much about Pete Buttigieg these days. He took on Bernie Sanders for his supporters, the fabled Bernie Bros. I guess he's not happy with their tone. Essentially, the other candidates attacked Sanders supporters. Generally, that sort of thing is not done. In fact, you all remember when Hillary Clinton referred to Trump supporters as a basket of deplorables. It is not considered, the done thing to accuse the voters of being stupid or evil. But I suppose all the old rules have been suspended. Bernie Sanders lashed out at Bloomberg's policing policies as New York City mayor, said that he targeted African American and Latinos in an outrageous way. And former Vice President Joe Biden, who's still in the race, charged that Bloomberg's stop and frisk policy ended up throwing 5 million black men against the wall. Watching from afar, Donald Trump joined the Bloomberg pile-on. I hear he's getting pounded tonight. He's in a debate. Elizabeth Warren, who is supposedly an enemy of oligarchy, said, I have no doubt that Michael Bloomberg is reaching in his pocket right now and spending another $100 million to try to erase every American's memory about what happened on the debate stage. I don't think there's any chance of the senator beating Donald Trump, Bloomberg declared before noting Sanders' rising wealth. The best-known socialist in the country happens to be a millionaire with 3 houses. Sanders defended owning multiple houses, noting that he has one in Washington, where he works, and 2 in Vermont, the state he represents in the Senate. Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, went after both Bloomberg and Sanders, warning that no one threatened to burn down the Democratic Party and the other was trying to buy it. Well, that one was threatening to burn down the Democratic Party. I wonder what will happen with the Bernie Bros if the nomination is stolen from him again this year. Will they dutifully support the Democratic nominee, even if that nominee is someone as objectionable to them as Mini Mike Bloomberg? Will they sit out the election? I suppose if they really wanted to stick it to the Democratic Party establishment, they could vote for Donald Trump. When people get angry in this way, well, all bets are off, Donald Trump commented Mini Mike Bloomberg's debate performance tonight was perhaps the worst in the history of debates, and there have been some really bad ones. He was stumbling, bumbling, and grossly incompetent. If this doesn't knock him out of the race, nothing will. Not so easy to do what I did. Now, as people have pointed out, that Bloomberg was getting bashed on stage, and then, let's go to a commercial break, and look, there's Mike Bloomberg telling you what a great guy he is and how everyone loves him. He has bought a small army of influencers on social media. So get ready. Get ready for some ripe memes coming from Bloomberg's campaign. Now, let's see. It has been brought to my attention that people are asking questions about the show in the chat, and I haven't been paying sufficient attention to it, which is an oversight that I will try to rectify. Now, hang on, just let me mute this so I'm not listening to myself talking. Someone, I think it was Matt Vey, was commenting on the DVDs behind me. I have to move stuff around. I got a couch, and I don't know. I took all the DVDs out of boxes. I don't really have any place to put them, proper place, shelves. But of course, if they remain in the boxes, I have no idea, what I have or where it is. So there's a bunch of them over here next to the window, and there's a bunch of them stacked in a closet. And so that's the DVD story. Someone said, let's see, do you approve of KMG's radical and brave choice of attire? That's from someone calling himself Alex DeLarge. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose it's old school that you appear in public, you speak, put on a jacket and a tie. Let's see, KMG has no chill. I don't know what that means, actually. Someone suggested that yesterday that I looked down on my audience. That's far from the truth. The people who follow me on this stream and on Twitter are the finest people on earth. I mean, why would I knock people who make a point of listening to what I say, who have an interest in my opinions? And yeah. So let's see. Kevin is going monochrome in dress tonight. Well, yeah, I just decided green on green on green. Seemed to match. That's that's all I can say in that regard. Okay, so some people like the clothing. People have asked about the status of my battle with PayPal. And okay, I think this is the final update. This has been going on for months, that my account was restricted and then entirely shuttered. And PayPal claimed that I was not presenting sufficient evidence of my identity. So what did they want from me? Well, a bank statement, my entire bank statement. So, PayPal knows, where I spend my money, when, on what. And I also sent them my complete last tax return. So they know all about that. Supposedly, this is all at the behest of my federal government, who is concerned about money laundering. And I guess the fear is that what I'm assembling, fat stacks of cash for some nefarious purpose. So then, see, this became very irritating because whenever I sent stuff to PayPal, I would hear nothing back from them, only a request for more documentation. Well, what documentation? It was just like a form letter. And in fact, when I signed into PayPal, they said, you need to go to the confirmation place on the site, which I did, and it wouldn't allow me to actually upload more data concerning my identity. So I've spoken to about 5 people from PayPal now, and this is also very irritating. They essentially said things that were different from what the last person told me. I'm sure many people have this experience. And I heard, the person who promised you that was not authorized to say that. So they told me they wanted a copy of my government ID. So I got a picture of that, both sides, and a picture of my birth certificate. And I sent that to them last Friday. And I didn't hear anything from them. So I called them yesterday. And, these documents have not been attached to your file. Of course, it hasn't been attached to my file. But we're going to attach it now. And so it will enter the flow. This fellow kept using the word flow, and I had no idea what that meant. But it should be resolved within 48 to 72 hours. So I signed on to PayPal today, and it appears that there are now no more restrictions on my account. So if people are interested, my PayPal address is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. I know that people were upset with me because they had attempted to donate money to me, and it had seemingly disappeared into a void. I was not getting it in any event. Now, I presume that PayPal has reimbursed these people. I mean, it certainly should, but it looks good for now. So this story has a happy ending. So let's talk about Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from Minnesota, that she has been accused of marrying her brother. And, well, that's what they call incest, which apparently is becoming popular in the American political scene. We had earlier this year, or last year, I guess, we learned about Hunter Biden, the proud scion of the Biden family, who started dating, as they say, his late brother's widow, which is, also incest, as it has been traditionally understood. I guess when word got out about this, that relationship ended in a hurry, and then Hunter Biden married a woman from South Africa that he had known for 10 days. Nothing suspicious about that. The Daily Mail reports Ilhan Omar did marry her brother and said she would do what she had to do to get him papers to keep him in the U.S., reveals Somali community leader. Ilhan Omar told friends years ago that the man who went on to become her second husband was in fact her brother. DailyMail.com can confirm. Abdihakim Osman is the first person to go on record to speak of how Omar said she wanted to get her brother papers so he could stay in the United States. It has been rumored that Omar and Ahmed Elmi are siblings, but because of a lack of paperwork in war-torn Somalia, proof has never been uncovered. Yes, there's a policy lesson there, and that lesson is that you do not accept immigrants from failed states, because there is no way of determining who they are or anything about them, really. And in addition, there are many states around the world who do not observe Western norms with regard to accuracy of information, personal information, putative university degrees, and the like. So it's probably not a good idea to accept immigrants from those countries as well. Now, one might wonder why Ilhan Omar has been shopped by a member of her own community. Well, it's the nature of the relationships in such communities that if a person becomes prominent, there's a lot of envy that rises to the surface. There was an incident in my province of British Columbia a couple of decades ago when the premier of the province, Glenn Clark, was forced to resign after it was revealed that he was under RCMP investigation. Now, this was a farcical situation where the RCMP showed up at his house at 7 o'clock in the evening, and there was a film crew there from BCTV, and they ransacked his home while his terrified-looking wife paced back and forth, and the next day they ransacked his office in the provincial capital of Victoria, where I live. And, so was the RCMP investigating Premier Clark? We can neither confirm nor deny that. Well, of course they were investigating him, but that line was kept up for the longest time. Why were they investigating him? Because he had received a gift of 2 outdoor decks on his house. And the story goes that he paid only for the building materials, not the work that was done. And the fellow who had done the premier this favor was a member of Vancouver's Greek community. And he was shopped by another jealous member of the Greek community. Why does this guy get to be so close to the premier of British Columbia? There's all sorts of mystery about Ilhan Omar. That let's see, Osman says no one knew there had been a wedding until the media turned up the marriage certificate years later. It's a very complicated wife this woman leads. Osman's revelations are sure to renew calls for an investigation into the Minnesota freshman representative who has repeatedly refused to answer questions on her marriage to Elmi. I saw that she had tweeted shortly after this story came out that this was typical of the racist and Islamophobic media. Well, we do have I'm looking at a picture of Ilhan Omar's brother here. He appears to be, shall I say, a rather flamboyant fellow. Perhaps not the kind of fellow who would be interested in women. Let's see, Omar's spokesman said that she does not comment on her family or personal life. Oh, really? So that when one is accused of marriage fraud and immigration fraud, well, that's personal. It's really no one's business. Here's a timeline from the Daily Mail. 1997, Omar and her family settle in Minnesota after fleeing war-torn Somalia. 2002, she marries Ahmed Abdisalan Hirsi in a religious ceremony, but it is not recognized legally. The pair go on to have 2 children. 2009, Omar marries Ahmed Elmi in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. 2010. He enrolls at North Dakota State University to study fine art and lives with Omar. 2011. Omar claims she and Elmi split this year and he went back to the UK. 2012. Omar and Hersey have their third child. Elmi is still in the US, according to college officials and social media. 2013. Elmi starts working in London. 2017. Omar divorces Elmi. 2018. Omar marries Hersey in a civil ceremony. 2018. The marriage is brought up during Omar's campaign for Congress. She denies it and is largely ignored because of the lack of proof around it. July 2019. President Trump thrusts the rumor back into the spotlight. July 2019 again, DailyMail.com reveals Omar and Hersey have separated and she's moved into a penthouse apartment. The Mail also reveals Omar's secret relationship with her married aide, Tim Mynett. August 2019, Tim Mynett's wife files for divorce, claiming her husband had professed his love for Omar. October 2019, Omar formally files for divorce from Hersey. Omar is granted the divorce from Hersey. December 12, 2019, Hersey marries pediatric nurse Ladin Ahmed, and on December 19th of last year, Mynett is granted a divorce from his wife, Beth. Now, so Omar is now together with her campaign manager, and there have been questions raised about the money raised for her campaign and where it has gone. But let's see. The first report that Omar and her husband were siblings appeared on the website Somali Spot in 2016. It said of Elmi, 34, as soon as Ilhan Omar married him, he started university at her alma mater, North Dakota State University, where he graduated in 2012. Shortly thereafter, he moved to Minneapolis, where he was living in a public housing complex and was later evicted. He then returned to the United Kingdom. The New York Post reported last month that the FBI was investigating the marriage and had met with a source in Minneapolis who handed over a trove of documents related to the marriage. Any findings were to be shared with Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the U.S. Department of Education, the paper reported. Anyone found guilty of committing marriage fraud faces up to 5 years in jail and a fine of up to $250,000. The marriage, the contested marriage, was conducted by Christian minister Willisha Harris. When the Daily Mail approached her last year, she would not discuss the ceremony or why a Muslim couple would have asked her to marry them. She and her husband Marcus run the Great and Mighty Works Ministries in Richfield, Minnesota, which is described on his Facebook page as a non-denominational, Bible-believing, Bible-teaching, and Bible-living ministry that believes in being a living example of Jesus, the Anointed One. And there's another picture of Ilhan Omar's brother, looking perhaps even more flamboyant than he had in the previous one. And the Mail has helpfully provided a copy of the marriage certificate. I just wonder, was anything going to be done about this? I mean, is there really an FBI investigation? I mean, we learned last week that Andrew McCabe can illegally release information and then lie about it under oath 3 times and is not charged. Now, he may be charged for other things. Investigations are still ongoing, but I guess I don't wonder whether people care about this sort of thing. Oh yeah, she married her brother. Isn't that what people do nowadays? That maybe incest has been. There's no more stigma surrounding it, because it seems to me that not that long ago, that a political candidate who was accused, of incest, of marrying her brother, would be finished, would be forced to resign in disgrace, and then would fade into obscurity. But no, Ilhan Omar, for the time being, seems to go from strength to strength, delivering broadsides against Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and this is our party now, the party of the squad, and we are the future, etc., etc., etc. That decadence is one of the symptoms of collapsing society. Decadence, its formal meaning, it doesn't decadence does not refer to chocolate desserts or the like. It infuriates me when I see food described as decadent. No, decadence means a decline in standards. And here's another example of this, again, from the Mail, which is the English newspaper which publishes the news that the American news media is too embarrassed to report. Ex-Chicago Police Chief Eddie Johnson gets to keep his $190,000 a year pension despite being fired for lying about sleeping in his city-issued SUV after a night drinking with his female security guard. Eddie Johnson, 59, was fired by Mayor Lori Lightfoot on December 2nd, 2019. Since then, he's reportedly been receiving a pension of over $15,800 a month. He was awarded the pension by the Policemen's Annuity and Benefit Fund of Chicago. It adds up to nearly $190,000 annually, or 75% of his average salary of just over $253K per year. Johnson was found asleep at the wheel of his SUV after midnight on October 17th. He blamed his medication, oh, here we go again, for making him drowsy, and said he'd had a few drinks at dinner hours earlier. It reminds me of the scene in Withnail and I, where Richard E. Grant insists where he's so drunk that he's barely sensate. And when the policeman asks him how much to drink, he just says, "I just had a few ales, officer." So this story is very, very amusing. I suppose it's also kind of sad and sickening. But I guess as the ship goes down, we can we will remain amused. Let's see. He was fired after he lied about having a few drinks with dinner when he was found asleep behind the wheel of his SUV at 12:30 a.m. He blamed his medication, but subsequent media reports disclosed that the married father of three had been drinking for hours and kissing a woman on his security detail. He was a 31-year veteran of the department when he was named superintendent by then Mayor Rahm Emanuel and then confirmed by City Council. So I was at a function a couple of weeks ago, and a person asked the question, why do they rave about government jobs? This seemed to be a mystery to him. And, I suggested some reasons. That if you have a government job, you're going to get your pay, the agreed level of pay, which is going to be put into your account every 2 weeks or twice a month. And, you get your vacation days. No one steals your vacation days. And it's difficult to get rid of government employees. That we see with this superintendent of the Chicago police, that how badly do you have to screw the pooch in order to suffer, the meat punishment? Well, it's an unscrewable pooch, largely. Let's see, on January 1st, 2021, Johnson will be eligible to receive a post-retirement cost of living increase of more than $5,600 for that year. Johnson was found asleep in a car near a stop sign not far from his home on the night of October 17th after a member of the public called 911. Responding officers allegedly took steps to keep the incident a secret and protect the superintendent by driving him home without performing a sobriety test. Johnson later blamed his drowsiness on a mix-up with medication he was taking and said he'd had a few drinks. How can I explain it? It's just your body kind of gives you warning with the high blood pressure thing that you may pass out, so I pulled over, stopped, and I just rested myself until that feeling passed. He said he normally would have had his driver with him, but that he'd given him the night off after a long day of work. It was later revealed that Johnson had been seen kissing a member of his security detail, Cynthia Donald, 44, hours earlier at Ceres Cafe, a Chicago institution known for its heavy pours. Donald, who was also married, had been assigned to Johnson's security detail since 2016, but was transferred after their rendezvous came to light. Police accused her of tampering with evidence after she allegedly returned a damaged phone as part of a probe into their evening out. Uh, let's see. Yes, Mayor Lightfoot. There's a picture of Mayor Lightfoot of Chicago, and no hyperbole here. This is one of the most terrifying faces I have ever seen. Who guards the guardians? The question the ancients asked. There's a amusing website called Second City Cop, where a policeman tells the true nature of what goes on in Chicago. Too long didn't read. It's incredibly corrupt. The chief of police needs a security detail. A 44-year-old woman is part of the security detail. I mean, do they provide bed partners for chiefs of police now? Let's see. The firing capped off a tumultuous year for Johnson, who is being sued by actor Jussie Smollett for alleging that he faked a racist attack on himself last year. Johnson stood in front of reporters in February to accuse Smollett of staging the attack to get a raise on Empire. Well, charges have been relayed against Jussie Smollett, but what did we learn? We learned that Kim Fox, the city prosecutor, intervened on behalf of Smollett, allegedly at the behest of a woman associated with the Hillary Clinton cabal. Another story of Chicago. But, I guess if we have a theme of this first week of the KMG show, it would be when our leaders refuse to recognize the law, they refuse to enforce the law, and when people attempt to do their job for them, they're accused of vigilantism and racism. When the powers that be don't even bother to hide their contempt, not just for the law, but for tradition and standards generally, how do they expect, or why would they expect that people would go along with this? That is to say, oh yes, you have to obey all of these other laws, but no, these laws, the ones, especially the ones that are directed at us now, we don't need to uphold those laws. We just ignore them because, we are your betters, and you should be careful about crossing us. Vancouver, a city I lived most of my life in, is becoming a hellhole. One of the reasons it's becoming a hellhole is because of junkies. A while ago, the city of Vancouver, certainly its elite, decided that they love junkies. What can they do for junkies? There's just not enough that they can do for junkies. So you have people shooting up in the streets. You have open-air drug markets in Vancouver that the police simply ignored. And here's the latest from The Guardian. Opioid vending machine opens in Vancouver. MySafe scheme for addicts aims to help reduce overdose deaths in Canadian City. The MySafe project, which resembles a cash machine, gives addicts access to a prescribed amount of a medical quality hydromorphone, a drug about twice as powerful as heroin. People will know it as Dilaudid. That's the drug that killed Elvis. Dr. Mark Tyndall, a professor of epidemiology at the University of British Columbia, came up with the project as part of an attempt to reduce the number of overdose deaths in the city, which reached 395 last year. I think ethically we need to offer people a safer source, he said. So basically the idea is that instead of buying unknown fentanyl from an alley, we can get people pharmaceutical grade drugs. Dawn Durbin, a social worker from Vancouver, is one of 14 opioid addicts using the MySafe vending machine. So I'm led to believe then that being a heroin addict doesn't preclude one from working as a social worker in my province of British Columbia. After being prescribed opioid-based painkillers in the early 2000s, the father of two developed an addiction and now feels unable to cope without his daily dose. Unlike most addicts, Durbin, 66, does not have to break the law by sourcing his fix through drug dealers. Instead, he is prescribed Dilaudid, and for the past couple of weeks has been able to collect his pills from a vending machine near his home in East Side, a rundown neighborhood with a large homeless community. Yes, and the physical area of the downtown East Side continues to grow with each passing year as block after block fall to the blight. But social worker Durbin, he's quite pleased. This is a godsend, he told The Guardian during one of his visits to the machine. After verifying his identity with a biometric fingerprint scan, the machine dispensed Durbin with 3 pills for each of his 4 daily visits in line with his prescription. It means I don't have to go and buy iffy dope. I have a clean supply. I don't have to deal with other people so much. You're treated like an adult, not some kind of demonic dope fiend. We're just people with mental health issues. Again, having severe mental health issues does not preclude one from being a social worker in the province of BC. Vancouver already has several schemes in place to accommodate for its large community of drug addicts. See, they're a community. A pioneer of so-called harm reduction techniques, Vancouver was the first North American city to introduce a supervised injection site where users can administer drugs in front of medical professionals in 2003, and there are now several in the area. There are also programs allowing users to access prescribed Dilaudid or pharmaceutical heroin. Now, this is The Guardian, which is a British newspaper. And well into the 1960s, Britain had a scheme of legalized heroin for registered addicts. Ginger Baker, who was the drummer for Cream, was famously a registered addict. Now, this experiment was abandoned for several reasons, one of which is that the idea was, okay, we give them their dope, and then, they don't get the bad stuff, and we can keep them at a sufficient level so they're not risking overdoses. Well, what happened was pretty much all the addicts decided, thanks for the free dope, but we want more dope. And so it did not work. A few years ago, Stephen Harper's government decided to crack down on Vancouver for its policy of loving junkies and giving public facilities over to them. And he was told by the Supreme Court of Canada, the 9 black-robed, unelected Critarchs who are the actual rulers of Canada, that no, the government of Canada could not do that. Victoria, my own city of Victoria, well, it's difficult to go anywhere in my city without breathing in marijuana smoke. That not that long ago, I was entering the apartment building where I was living at the time, and I was rather shocked to see a man leaning against the fence, not 10 feet away from my living room. And why was he leaning against the fence? Because he was shooting up. And I guess what Vancouver and Victoria have discovered is that the more you coddle junkies, the more junkies you get. But back to the Guardian. Dr. Mark Ujjainwala, an addictions doctor who runs Recovery Ottawa in Eastern Canada, says users of illegal drugs need treatment for their conditions rather than easier access to substances. Well, good for you. There's some sense, finally. He argues such schemes are in effect ushering users towards death rather than treating curable conditions. If you were a patient addicted to fentanyl and you came to me, I would say, okay, I will put you in a treatment center for 1 to 3 months, get you off the fentanyl, get you stable, get your life back together, and then you'll be fine. Why would I want to give you free heroin and tell you to go to a trailer and inject? Well, I must say I like the cut of this man's jib. Ujjainwala also fears drugs distributed from machines such as MySafe could end up on the black market. Dr. Ricky Blumenthal, I have to say that I'm not disposed to trust a physician who goes by the name Ricky, but perhaps that's just me. He is a professor of preventative medicine at the University of Southern California, disagrees with Dr. Ujjainwala. He says it's always better for someone to use licitly produced, safe medication rather than illicitly produced or illicitly distributed substances, which often have contaminants and other things that are unhealthy for people. Durbin also believes the machine will help him back to good health. My long-term aim is to get off these things. Yeah. If any of my listeners have ever read Theodore Dalrymple on this subject, well, if you haven't read him, you should. He exposes many of the myths around drug addiction. Now, I once lived in the Commercial Drive area of Vancouver, which is, it's junkie central, or one of the Vancouver's many junkie hotspots. And merchants were complaining that their stores were continually broken into, and particularly pharmacies for people looking, for anything that they could swallow. And streets rather unpleasant. Now, the myth is that junkies commit crimes because they need money for their dope. As Dalrymple demonstrates, using published statistics, the overwhelming majority of junkies were criminals before they started being junkies. Now, I'm curious as to why this goodwill it's only shown towards drug users. There are people that are called meth drinkers. They drink methylated spirits, such as rubbing alcohol. And of course, this is exceedingly toxic. But one of the reasons they do it is because they don't have enough money for alcohol. Should we expect then that the government will intervene with these rubbies and provide them, licitly produced alcohol, which is, free of contaminants? Perhaps they could, put up these MySafe kiosks in the downtown east side, where people with alcohol problems could get free alcohol. It's just, again, there's supposedly laws against this sort of thing in my country, but, laws are for suckers, apparently. So let's see. Heroin addicts routinely break into pharmacies to get laxatives, says Polygons. Yikes. Chogo King 666 says, oh my God, a diluted vending machine. I would relapse in 2 seconds. Yeah, iffy dope. Heroin addiction has always seemed to, or as long as to me, seemed to be a kind of chemical Buddhism. That, one retires, one uses it to retire from the world. I once had an argument, not a quarrel, an argument, about that Scottish movie, Danny Boyle's movie about heroin addicts, Train Spotting. And she said that it was an anti-drug movie, and I said, no, it's a pro-drug movie. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, look at the passion that the people in this movie have for junk. Do you see this kind of passion amongst other people? There are people that passionate about their jobs, about their family, about their friends, about their country, than these Scottish junkies were about heroin. I really think that anti-drug campaigns, though they frequently backfire by, well, here's an example. When I first heard about heroin when I was young, and I asked adult about it, and, oh, why do people take heroin? Because it's the most glorious feeling in the world. And I thought, okay, but, telling people that is not going to result in fewer drug addicts. It's going to result in more drug addicts. Heroin addiction, it really brings order to a person's life because they wake up every morning and they have a purpose. It's a simple purpose. Score. They've got to score. And after they score, you know, they can just chill out. And the next day, it starts again. Dalrymple reports that in Asia, they treat heroin addicts rather differently. They put them in prison, and they spend, I don't know, 3 days to a week there, and when they come out, they're no longer heroin addicts. Another one of the myths that we're told is that getting off heroin is like the worst thing in the world. And well, I suppose it is, worse for some people than for others. But this is misplaced kindness. That no, we wouldn't want people to go through the horrors of withdrawal. Oh, so you want them to keep using heroin? You want our money to go to gangsters? You want our cities blighted by these people because we don't want to seem cruel to them? There are a number of safe injection sites in my city. There are a bunch of little boxes which have been placed all around the city. Presumably there's dozens of them. I run into them all the time, where people are supposed to deposit their used syringes. And my landlord a few years ago lived across the street from one of the major government offices in Victoria, and it was one of the places where the junkies were coddled. And so there was a little junkie community pretty much spending all day on the sidewalk outside of his restaurant. And as junkies do, they frequently came into his restaurant and started shouting and throwing their arms about and making threats or attempting robberies or assaulting his wife. And so he'd call the police. And the cop shop in Victoria is literally a 2-minute drive from there. But strangely, the police typically never showed up, he told me, until 30 to 45 minutes later. I guess they, don't want to get their hair mussed or something like that. That, I guess the junkies are a kind of sacred monsters of our society. So let's talk about something lighter now. Oh, Meghan Markle. It's not been a good week for her. Oh, I should, I don't want to go on incessantly about Victoria, but Meghan Markle and her husband, Prince Harry, are currently living in a mansion owned by a Russian oligarch just a few miles up the road from where I live. And it was revealed this week that her security costs are being met by Canadian taxpayers. I had thought, and I expressed on the previous stream, my fear that Queen Elizabeth had given in to the blackmail from Harry and Meghan Markle. But it appears that this is not correct. The go-to site for all the latest Harry and Meghan news is called harrymarkle.wordpress.com. And the latest entry from today, the battle of the royal family versus the Sussexes continues. The protracted negotiations between the royal family and the Sussexes continues, with parts of a divorce deal being announced and others that are covered under the blanket of still being under discussion. In short, I see that to mean that things have been decided, but they don't wish to reveal it for various reasons. It could be that the royal family fear public backlash, or that the Sussexes will, that's a hard word to say, will retaliate somehow, and we know they are capable and won't hesitate to do so, because they still believe that they can get what they want, and if they know they can't, then they have nothing left to lose and can cause more damage. Now, I'll just interject here to say that supposedly the Sussexes had created a brand, Sussex brand, and they took out copyrights on hundreds of different items. And this is all part of their quest for independence. seems to be living rent-free in a mansion owned by a Russian oligarch is hardly evidence of independence, but they have their own thing to do. And I guess it involves giving speeches. And Prince Harry and Meghan Mertz, they spoke to J.P. Morgan Chase executives, for which they were supposedly paid a six-figure sum. What did Prince Harry talk about? Well, there's an embargo on the text of the speech that he gave, but people who attended the function, he talked about his mental health problems, which derive, in his view, from the violent and tawdry death of his mother in 1997. Now, I don't mean to belittle his grief, but this happened, 23 years ago. And one would think that he would have other things to talk about, but no, Prince Harry is all about how miserable he is. Well, there's a lot of competition in that area, in that sphere, in that genre. And there seems to be an enormous audience for woe is me stories. But I don't know. Is that enough to make a brand? I don't know what. I guess Meghan Mertz is all about empowerment, progressivism, that sort of thing, anti-tabloid. Of course, any criticism of Meghan is racist. Of course, these two are famously woke, and there's nothing more woke than being paid a large sum of money to speak to the executives of what is essentially a criminal enterprise. By that, I mean J.P. Morgan Chase. If you've ever seen pictures of Harry and Meghan, you notice something odd, which is that the sexual hierarchy seems to be reversed. Meghan, was a C-list or C-plus list actress who set her sights on bagging a royal, which she managed to do. But if you look at the pictures of the two of them together, it is Harry who is always gazing at Meghan in adoration, whereas Meghan is not looking at him. She is, I suppose, looking to all the fans, showing her big smile, and so that, she demands to be worshipped. She doesn't seem to be all that interested in her husband. I'm going to make the bold statement that I think that she's just interested in his title, and now there are difficulties with that. Back to Harry Markle, the most troubling statement that people are trying to decipher is the 12-month review period, and it's claimed to see that it works for all parties, but let's be perfectly honest here. Which party does it really work for, and what does it mean? This isn't a trial separation, but it is a bitter public divorce that Harry and Meghan have filed against his family, where they have blamed them in the media for giving them no choice for their actions. Naturally, the statement saying that they had no choice is utter poppycock, because they had paid people on retainer for the exit plan well over a year ago. They then announced the divorce publicly, along with their demands, with little respect or consideration for the rest of the royal family, playing the victims. Yet we know that is far from the truth, as the Sussex exit plan had been in place before the engagement, it seems. Why is a 12-month review period necessary? Is it to allow the royal family time to see what other plans the Sussexes have and then to react accordingly? Because for sure, the duo are up to no good, it seems. Some believe that the period will allow Harry to return to the family, thus why HRH was not stripped as yet, although even if it can be stripped, it can be reinstated, that meaning His Royal Highness. It may seem harsh, but I feel most people would have preferred that option. Trying to play out a divorce in public isn't easy, and it has to appear to be amicable, but the public these days prefer honesty compared to the days of an illiterate public who were more easily fooled and placated. Yeah, this reminds me of something, which is that I suppose members of the royal family, you would think, oh, yes, we have all of this freedom that didn't exist in the past. It's now, they all get divorced, seemingly every single one of them, except for the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. And Prince Harry was notorious for stumbling out of nightclubs at 3 o'clock in the morning with his arm around some slag. And, oh, well, he's just sowing his wild oats, that sort of thing. But the difficulty is that there is so much greater scrutiny of these people than there used to be. Now, I mean, they all have luxurious residences, and they could confine their debaucheries to those places. But I don't know. This is too stifling. So royal aides must remember that today in society, valid criticism is essential, necessary, and is acceptable versus sugar-coated statements that amount to nothing but have to be recorded. So what's happened is that the Sussex brand has been kiboshed by the Queen because she has said that the couple may not use their titles to flog tat over the internet or in chain stores. This was the whole impetus behind this Sussex royal brand, was to sell stuff. It's kind of like what Gwyneth Paltrow does, only Gwyneth Paltrow is only an actress, whereas Harry and Meghan Mertz are, well, royalty. But the nature of their royalty is now in question because the Queen has made it known that if they attempt to use the royal brand to sell tat, their titles will be stripped from them. And then they would have nothing left to sell. It's rumored that the couple was in California, Northern California, at Stanford. They were talking to a whole bunch of brainy people. Why brainy people would want to talk to Harry and Meghan is an interesting question. But the rumor is, and this is hilarious, that apparently they want honorary doctorates from this venerable institution. Yes, doctors of philosophy, I suppose. So let's move on to another story about famous people and their children. And this is a deeply, deeply strange story, first broken by the London Sun. Steven Spielberg's adopted daughter, Michaela, 23, comes out as a porn star, revealing her dad is in complete support of her as she opens up about being groomed and abused as a child. Now, first off, Steven Spielberg is a powerful man. He knows everybody. He's friendly with everybody in Hollywood. And, he's a wealthy man, influential man. And one would think that, he's in a position to offer his daughter, say, a no-show job at, his production company, Amblin. Oh, yes, everyone's really interested in your notes, Michaela. And, I can't offer you much, just say $250,000 a year. And, that would keep her from masturbating on the internet for strangers, which is her life goal. Again, so Steven Spielberg, he's just found out now that his daughter was groomed and abused starting from the age of 10, say. Oh, but it wasn't the family, and it wasn't anyone in the close circle of friends of the Spielbergs. Well, who was it then? Because Steven Spielberg is in a position to hire people to mete out vigilante justice to the people who abused his daughter. We have this woman, Michaela, who's an odd-looking woman, I must say. The London Sun and other publications have boosted her career by printing numerous photographs of her near naked in her bondage gear. It's all about empowerment, she says. Her videos have featured titles like "I Give My Huge Natural Breasts Some Love and Care with Rose Tea Oil," ugh, and "Huge Breasted Woman Pleasures Herself in Calm Environment." She has a fiance who is described as a 47-year-old professional darts player called Chuck Pankow. And in deference to his feelings, Michaela has decided that she will not be having sex with other men on camera. Well, that's it's good to know there's still some life in the institution of marriage. She insists that her choice to go into porn is not about hitting bottom. No, 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 no. But rather about owning her sexuality and making money. Her goal now is to make enough in the industry so she's not tied down financially by things. I can't stay dependent on my parents or even the state for that matter. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just doesn't feel comfortable for me. I read an article in the Los Angeles Times a few years ago talking about how much money porn actresses, if you want to call them that, earn. And apparently the bottom has dropped out of that industry. Michaela had posted videos to Pornhub, which apparently is trying to go legit or, leave the ghetto. And because of these sites, these file sites, these free file sites, there is not very much money to be made in this industry. She said that by 11, Michaela said that she had started drinking to cope with her trauma, and as a teenager, she was sent to a boarding school for troubled teens. But rather than help her get her in line, it worsened her anxiety, depression, self-hatred, and attachment issues. It was there she developed an eating disorder. She continued to drink for years, and at age 21 was drinking every day. She admits she almost died a couple times. Still, she said unequivocally that it wasn't her parents' fault, and they couldn't have known what she was dealing with. Seems to me that if you have to send your daughter, for treatment because she's getting drunk constantly at the age of 11, well, there are reasons behind this, and it's the job of, professionals in the field to get to the bottom of it. And I suppose it would have been, useful for the Spielbergs to have known about this. Now, I'm moving into sensitive territory here. There are rumors about Steven Spielberg, which I won't go into for reasons of defamation. You can go to AGC Gossip if you want the latest from Crazy Days and Nights, where this is all well documented. But this is such an unreal story, because one would think that Steven Spielberg's reaction to his daughter deciding to become a professional porn star would be rage, despair, along those lines, desire for vengeance against various people. Michaela says that Steven Spielberg is intrigued by her decision. That the use of that word came as a shock to me. Yes, I don't know that we've seen any actual official reaction from Steven Spielberg, but I'll be sure to update listeners when that occurs. I want to talk about reality TV. There was a woman called Caroline Flack, who was 40 years old, who was associated with this British reality show called Love Island. Well, it's sort of, you know what it's about, right? You get a bunch of hot young people together in a tropical location, and who is going to sleep with whom? And, all the jealousies, and I guess glasses of wine being tossed in people's faces. I learned from 30 Rock that that's what people do. That's what women do on reality shows, is they throw wine in other women's faces. So Caroline Flack, she was a kind of a professional reality show creature. She had been charged with assaulting her boyfriend, although this circumstances involved there are disputed, and she topped herself about a week ago. And there's been all of this hypocritical mewling from the producers of at ITV, everyone associated with Love Island. Reality TV kills. What is the purpose of reality TV? It is to humiliate people in front of as many strangers as possible. That this is now seen as a career choice by young people. They are asked about, what they intend to do with their lives, what they would like to do, what career they would like to have. And now large numbers of them are saying they want to become reality TV stars. Well, if you're exposing yourself to the entire world, all your embarrassments, all your anguish, that seems like a strange career choice. But, our society now it trades in misery. And the reality show allows people to trade misery, real or imagined, for money. It's win-win. I never really followed any of the reality shows, but I don't know, about a decade ago, I decided this is obviously a phenomenon which is only getting bigger. It's not going away, so I owe it to myself to learn a little bit more about it. There was a show called The Surreal Life, and basically it was sort of like reality show superstars, that people who had been famous on some other reality show were put together in a house, and mayhem ensued. And let's see, I'm trying to remember that the people, Vern Troyer, who was the dwarf who played Mini-Me in the Mike Myers movies, he was there. And a former member of the Go-Go's, Jane Wiedlin. Now, I kind of liked her because she co-wrote Our Lips Are Sealed, which is one of the great pop songs. And she played Joan of Arc in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, a movie which I love. And there was this woman who was associated with the WWF called China with a Y. A big woman with muscles, a big head, big fake breasts. And this woman was going through some sort of breakup, and this became the focus of the show, to the extent that when I was watching it, I had this horrified thought, oh my God, they actually want this woman to kill herself on camera. You know that they're having discussions about this right now, of how far can we push this. If you've seen the movie Network, the TV networks turn to murder for higher ratings. I know that the reality show producers, they would want to be able to do this. China, she left the house on The Surreal Life. She OD'd fatally about a decade later, unmourned, unmissed. God save the poor woman. But women, they love these shows. They can't get enough of these shows. And, the media likes to pride itself on its intellectuality. And yet you see these supposedly serious women in papers like the New York Times and the Washington Post discussing The Bachelor, The Bachelorette in Paradise, or whatever. I mean, these are all fake shows. That, oh yes, they're going to be together. I choose you. Here's a rose. It's all fake. And from what I read, increasing number of these men who are on these shows, supposedly to find a female mate, or homosexual. I mean, I guess it's just another acting job. When the Jerry Springer show started, I mean, there had been shock TV before, but normal, people like Phil Donahue and Oprah in her early days, they had serious subjects as well. They pretended that they were high-minded. But then Jerry Springer comes along, and it's who's fighting over who's the baby daddy, and I'm sleeping with my brother-in-law, and I noticed a strange thing that these people were proud of this. They were proud of their behavior, and it normalized this kind of thing amongst the wider society. And after these tales of utter degradation were told to the audience, and particularly after, they all start swinging at each other, right? And trying to tear each other's hair out. And then these burly guys would come and separate them, but they weren't trying too hard, because the fight had to last for a certain amount of time so the audience could get its money's worth, as it were. And the crowd would start chanting, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. Wow, it's like the Roman Colosseum, that people are tearing themselves to pieces for some disgusting reasons. And this is now a form of entertainment that, I don't know, the Kardashians, they brought something new to the reality genre. And I guess Paris Hilton had rather pioneered this, which is the Kardashians have no known accomplishments or talents, but they were famous for reasons that, oh yes, Kim Kardashian made a sex tape. So what, you say? Plenty of people have made sex tapes. Well, the reason why her sex tape was some guy named Ray J, who I believe appeared on The Surreal Life, that the rumor was that there's a fuller, uncensored version of this sex tape in which Ray J urinates on Kim Kardashian. Oh, and this tape was released illegally. No, it wasn't. It was released by her mother. Her mother used this sex tape, sold the sex tape to make money and to make her daughter famous. There's nothing like a mother's love, is there? But the very fact that the Kardashians have no known accomplishments and no talent is what makes them the perfect democratic champions. This is anti-elitism taken to its logical conclusion. Why should you need to have any talent, any accomplishments in order to be famous? That's not very democratic, is it? Everyone should be famous. Everyone should be an aristocrat. And that's what reality TV provides. It provides the opportunity for ordinary people to become modern day aristocrats. Now, the price they pay is their soul, but that's not worth very much these days. So I'll end this segment by saying that I would not be surprised if in the near future we do have actual deaths on one of these reality shows. It reminded of a King of the Hill episode where Dale Gribble's Nancy Gribble, she is getting fired as the meteorologist because she knows nothing about the weather. She's being replaced by a professional. And so she decides that, well, she's going to have to make a name for herself. So she steals a van from the station, and her and Peggy and Dale, they go out to a forest fire, and they go way too far in, and it surrounds them, and it looks like, and Nancy is on camera, and she breaks down and starts screaming that she's going to die, and Peggy says, "You can't die because this is on camera." Because that was the rule. You go to YouTube and there's famous snuff films, if you like. You know, the one, Hey Guy, Nice Shot, that Filter song. Politician Bud Dwyer, he shot himself during a press conference. And there are others, but the rule of the networks has been that they will not show this kind of thing, even though one could say that it's legitimately newsworthy. But I wonder how long this prohibition is going to last. So, It's Thursday, Theater Thursday. We talk about movies, and today we are talking about a movie that was released last year. It is a Netflix movie. It's called Marriage Story. It's written, directed, and produced by Noah Baumbach, and it stars Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, and with a pretty much all-star cast of supporting actors: Laura Dern, who won an Academy Award for her performance, Alan Alda, Ray Liotta, Julie Haggerty. Noah Baumbach, he's interested in the subject of divorce, because that's what Marriage Story is about. He made a movie, The Squid and the Whale, in 2005, which is a largely autobiographical tale about his parents' divorce. I like that movie very much. It's painful to watch, particularly Jeff Daniels as the cuckolded husband. That he is such a pompous and yet such a pathetic figure that there's a subplot in the movie where a young student played by Anna Paquin, pretty much throws herself into his lap, and Jeff Daniels managed to blow it somehow. Now, this new film, Marriage Story, I suppose you could say, is about Baumbach's own divorce. He was married to the actress Jennifer Jason Leigh from 2005 to 2013. While he was married to her, he got involved with the lovely and talented Greta Gerwig, with whom he currently lives. It's a controversial movie, I have to say, which the type of movie that I've joked in the past about certain movies being like Blue Velvet being the ultimate date movie. That's a joke, because it's not, the very opposite of a date movie. Marriage Story is very opposite of a date movie as well, and it's the kind of movie that's likely to start serious quarrels between couples. For my own part, I have what Kingsley Amis once called male trade union loyalty. That is to say, in a dispute between a man and a woman, I'm tempted to take the man's side. This puts me very much in the minority these days. And what the greater culture teaches us about divorce now is that it's always the man's fault somehow. Now, it's not a question, as it was in the old days, that the man was responsible for acts of wickedness, beating his wife, cheating on her, using funds that should go to feed and support the children, spending it on drink, drugs, whatever. No, this movie shows what they call a frivorce or frivolous divorce. That our lead character in the movie is a director, and he works off Broadway. He is an experimental director using mixed media, and that's played by Adam Driver. His wife, Scarlett Johansson, she is an actress, and she had acted as a young woman, 18 or 19, in some hit teen comedy where she famously bared her breasts as, an act of empowerment. Or that's how it was seen. That's sort of a running joke throughout the movie. That, that's what, women show their breasts, as an act of empowerment. Not because, Scarlett Johansson has, particularly handsome breasts or whatever that the audience wants to see. No. It's all about empowerment. But she decides that the Hollywood life is not for her. She meets Adam Driver, and she moves to New York, and she works as an actress in his productions. Now, I suppose there's a lot of lessons that one can learn about this movie, one of which is that it's probably not a good idea for people who work together to live together. And it is especially not a good idea when you are married to someone that you are essentially a rival of. That it becomes clear in the movie that the movie begins with we know that the couple's getting divorced, and Scarlett Johansson sabotages an attempt at reconciliation when she refuses to read out the list of the things that she loves about her estranged husband. And she wants a divorce to a large degree because she feels stifled. That she resents the fact that she gave up her Hollywood career to work, to be not very highly compensated for doing these experimental shows, and the value, even though she's the lead actress in these productions, but the credit goes to her genius husband. And in fact, it is later revealed that he is actually a genius, at least according to the MacArthur Foundation, which has given him one of its genius grants. We learn that the couple have not been sharing a bed for, the greater part of a year, and also that the director had a one-off with someone who works in his theater company. It's difficult to blame him under the circumstances, but Scarlett Johansson wants out, and they don't have very much as a couple. They have a child, and the child has serious problems, which I'll get into shortly. It's a good. The couple agrees, Nicole and Charlie, that there's no need for lawyers. They're just going to split everything down the middle. And that's not what happens. Well, Scarlett Johansson decides, for reasons that are mysterious, that she is going to destroy her husband's life. She, despite promises to the contrary, she moves to Los Angeles immediately, taking their child with her, essentially kidnapping him. And after a discussion with her mother, who is played by the always delightful Julie Haggerty, she decides that, well, in Los Angeles, divorce is done a certain way. And the way that it is done is that you hire an assassin as your divorce attorney, who is played by Laura Dern in this film, a character called Nora Fanshawe, who talks about, she quotes a Tom Petty song, and, yes, and his ex-wife gets the money from that now, and I negotiated that deal. This movie it's not a very flattering portrayal of the legal community, certainly the divorce division. And Charlie, for the life of him, cannot understand why his wife has decided to hire Laura Dern. That suddenly he is being asked for essentially everything that he owns. He's also, he's separated from his son. He has to make constant flights to Los Angeles from New York in order to see him, and then he's advised that it would be very much in his interest to remain in Los Angeles, and the result is that his latest production, which Scarlett Johansson was the star of, she abandons this show shortly before it's to go to Broadway, and with the constant absences of the director, the whole project collapses. One would have thought that would be enough damage for Nicole, but it isn't. That Laura Dern, who is, it's very amusing the way she carries on in this film, flaunting her sexiness at all times. One would have thought that this is unprofessional behavior from a lawyer, but I guess different rules apply in Los Angeles, that yes, that he needs to be stripped clean, and that every possible accusation is made against him. That incredibly, Nicole has made it near impossible for Charlie to get a lawyer, because she has had talks with pretty much every prominent divorce attorney in Los Angeles, so they cannot take him on as a client. Now, he finally, Nicole's mother, she loves Charlie, even though she's devoted to her daughter. It's one of those very intense mother-daughter relationships, which is, love-hate relationship. And so, despite the fact that she set up her daughter with the shark lawyer, that she helps out Charlie by suggesting Ray Liotta, Jay Murata, and he explains, the rules of life in these things to Charlie, which is that this is a battle to the death, essentially. That you are going to be accused of everything under the sun, and so you're going to have to tell me everything that I can use against your wife, because other than that, you're going to lose. You're going to lose everything. You're going to have all your money taken away. You're going to lose custody of your son. Maybe you'll never get to see him again, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Charlie just wants. He's really put off by Ray Liotta's lawyer, that he just thinks that there must be some way to do this in a calmer way, a less aggressive way, less nasty way. And so he decides not to go with Ray Liotta, and he decides to go with Alan Alda. It's curious. Alan Alda, became famous playing smartasses, sarcastic men. But what in the last decade of his career, he's become a kind of a lovable figure. Although certainly the Senator Brewster that he played in the Aviator was not a lovable character. But I'm thinking of him on 30 Rock, and he plays kind of a lovable character in this movie. But the problem is that he's not a very good lawyer, and he seems to view his profession, or his practice of the profession, as a way to get paid for telling stories to other people. He has this vast fund of anecdotes, which he's always trotting out, and he loves to tell them. And he's telling one involved story to Charlie, and Charlie says, how much am I paying for this story? And Charlie decides that, he's going to go back to Ray Liotta. And this is where the fun really starts, when we just get a taste of the kind of tittle tattle that is reported in the tabloids, or now increasingly by mainstream news organizations, that claims that are made in court are privileged. Now, that doesn't mean that there's necessarily any truth to them whatsoever, but that means that the media is in a position to report stories that it otherwise would not be able to report. I recall that Barack Obama became a senator, a United States senator from Illinois, after several very curious incidents. One of which was the popular incumbent had his reputation destroyed because sealed divorce papers became mysteriously unsealed. And this fellow's wife had been on some Star Trek spin-off. She played some sexy alien, and she made a number of lurid claims against him. Were they true? Were they not? I would say that the old style is that people discounted claims that are made in divorce cases, but now they don't. I suppose because we're eager to believe the worst about everyone. Now, the Barbers have a son, Henry, and I have to confess that there were several times when it was the first time I watched this movie when I had to pause the recording and leave the room for several minutes because I was so agitated, so angry by what I was seeing. And one of the things that made me terribly angry is that the the breakdown of the marriage has taken a terrible toll on the son, Henry. We saw this in The Squid and the Whale, that the two children of the divorced couple, one of them starts masturbating in public everywhere, and the other one decides that it would be a good idea to steal a Pink Floyd song and trot it out as his own at a talent competition. But the son in this case, he is what, 8 years old, and he can't read. He can't read. I suppose one of the reasons he can't read is because he's obviously been instructed in what they call the whole language, or look-say, in which, forget about phonics, let's guess what words are. English is not Chinese. You know, it's not necessary to memorize thousands of words. You know, one can work them out phonetically, but he's what, in third grade, and he can't read. He also is not toilet trained, which is frankly incredible. He seems to be, I guess you could say, borderline autistic. But when he is taken to Los Angeles by his mother and separated from his father, it's made clear that she has poisoned the little boy's mind against his father, that he doesn't want to spend any time with him. He makes himself a complete pest whenever he is with his father, making impossible demand after impossible demand. And, this is not, good people don't want their children to turn out like this. But, and I have to say that while the movie is very much on the side of Charlie against Nicole, you can see, in the full facts of how developmentally disabled the son is, when they come to light, it's clear, at least clear to me, that Charlie he's been pushing this out of his mind, that he's got his busy job as a director, and he has this terrible marriage which is breaking down, and meanwhile his son is coming to pieces before his very eyes, and he doesn't seem to notice. This is this isn't what you'd call a comedy, but there are funny scenes in it. There's one in particular where there's a court-ordered therapist who is going to visit Charlie in the terrible, cheap apartment that he has rented in Los Angeles. And he's going to have a dinner with his son, and this is going to be observed by this woman who seems to completely lack affect. And Charlie works himself into such a state over this, which is not helped by his son's refusal to eat any of the things which he had previously loved eating. Oh, he's becoming a vegetarian or a vegan now or some nonsense. And he slices up his hand trying to explain some joke. He was asked about a joke involving a knife, and he had this little trick where it looked like he slashed himself, but he hadn't, and he actually slashes himself and loses copious amounts of blood, all the time trying to pretend that he isn't on the verge of passing out. So frightened is he of this therapist and the power of the courts over his son. In the end, peace returns. I suppose Charlie loses. He probably loses what, about $250,000, and he decides that he's going to abandon Broadway. He's going to move to Los Angeles. He's been offered a residence at UCLA, and there's a curious scene at the end of the movie where Charlie finds out that his wife now has a boyfriend, but his shoe is untied, and Scarlett Johansson, she comes up to him and she gets down on her knees and ties his shoe, which is a gesture of submission, a rather ambiguous signal. I see Scarlett Johansson has been criticized in this film for blankness, and the accusation is made is that she has no warmth, no capacity for demonstrating empathy. I really don't think that's true. I think that if you look at her performance of voice only as the operating system in her, you see just how delightful and warm she can be. But the character Nicole that she plays is a cold woman whose behavior is difficult to explain or even understand. That it's a very restrained performance from her. Adam Driver is quite good in this, and of course, most recently he's been on the big screen in Star Wars. But here he plays a man who he gives a very convincing performance of a man who is being driven crazy by forces and motives that he cannot understand. Wallace Shawn appears. He has a small role, but a very amusing one in this film, as one of the actors in Charlie's troupe. And we never get to hear any of his stories. He has this vast fund of anecdotes, just like Alan Alda, but they're all filthy. They're all disgusting, and they typically involve him having sex with famous people. When the troupe learns that he is getting divorced from his wife, well, Wallace Shawn is there to offer him some advice, which is, you should have sex with as many women as possible, and men too, he asks. I think this was very skillfully done, because the implication from the editing is that everyone is sick of these stories, because they're essentially the same story with different people told over and over again, and no one is actually listening to him. So there's no reason why the audience should listen to him as well. Now, Noah Baumbach claims that he showed his ex-wife, Jennifer Jason Leigh, this film, or the script and the movie, and she likes it a lot. If that's the case, she must be a big-hearted woman, because people who see this are going to jump to the conclusion that Scarlett Johansson's character is based on Jennifer Jason Leigh, and a lot of women, or most women, would be absolutely furious about this. A lot of them would threaten legal action to attempt to prohibit the publication of this film. Marriage Story is a rare kind of film nowadays that actually gets people talking. Most films are like amusement park rides, as Martin Scorsese famously said. There is nothing, there's nothing to talk about. They're so removed from real life, from people and their problems, that they're pure entertainments. I don't judge the value of a movie by how much it teaches me, but this movie taught me something that I didn't know, which I guess is simply how blasé people in Southern California are about divorce and its devastating personal consequences, and how divorce has become a kind of spectator sport now, where it's not enough to prevail, but people must know that you have prevailed as well. And for all of those reasons, I greatly enjoyed Marriage Story. But I do have a caveat, which is, if you are a man and you have been through, divorce, you might find this film too painful to watch, at least in one stretch, which was my experience. So those are my thoughts about Marriage Story. Next week, we are going to be discussing a very different kind of movie. It is Maurice Pialat's Under the Son of Satan, starring Gerard Depardieu. It is based on a novel by Georges Bernanos, who's responsible for two films made by Robert Bresson, including Mouchette. And whenever I think of the misery Olympics that take place daily in our world, I think of Mouchette, and you should watch this film if you want to know what real oppression is like. And Bernanos also wrote the libretto for my favorite opera, Francis Poulenc's Dialogue of the Carmelites. What can we say about Georges Bernanos? That his work is uncompromising. And Under the Son of Satan is a powerful and a terrifying film. We will get to it in a week's time. Tomorrow is the book club, and we are discussing Stefan Zweig's memoir. It's more of an intellectual memoir than a personal memoir. It's called The World of Yesterday. Speaking of opera libretti, Zweig famously wrote one for Richard Strauss, and when the conversations between Strauss and Zweig on the subject of National Socialism were intercepted by the Gestapo, this had terrible personal consequences for them both. So that's the end of the KMG Show, Episode 3. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I'll get more to the chat. I dipped my feet into the chat today. I will jump in wholeheartedly. Starting next week, I suppose tomorrow's show will be rather much like today's in terms of presentation. Once again, for those who are interested and would like to contribute, my PayPal account is now finally working after months, and the address is Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. Good night. Thanks for tuning in.